In 2009, I was on the Maasai Mara, part of the Serengeti National Park system in southwestern Kenya. And we were on safari. After a week of doing humanitarian work in Rwanda, we had decided to take a safari as a way of decompressing from the stresses of that time, as a way of team building, as a way of enjoying the beauty of Africa after seeing some of the really difficult things that we had seen for the entire week. And we had gone through the day of this game drive, seeing all kinds of cool things, right? We've seen elephants and Cape buffaloes, lions, leopards, wildebeest, all kinds of amazing stuff. And our guide told us how rare it is to see all of the big five on a single game drive. And he had explained that we had seen the elephants, the Cape buffalo, the lions, the leopards, and the only thing that we were missing was the incredibly rare, incredibly elusive Black Rhino. And so we changed our plans. We had decided that we were going to maybe look for more lions, or we were going to watch the hippos come in at dusk. But we decided, scrap all that. We're going to go try to find a rhino. And we spent the rest of that day in the game drive pursuing this Black Rhino. And to make a long story short, eventually we went over to a different part of the park, and where somebody had thought they'd maybe seen one. And at the end of the day, we did see one. One came out of the bush. A baby was with it. It was an incredible moment. And I've spoken much about this moment because I've taken so many insights for life from this. But it was just this magical, beautiful, wonderful moment that's hard to even explain and to put into words. And one of the things, as I reflected on that story, that really emerged for me was how much more enjoyable that experience was because of the people that were with me. And I started thinking, okay, what if it was different people with me? Would it have been enjoyable? Well, it still would have been enjoyable. We still would have seen the rhino. It still would have been pretty cool, but it would not have had the same vibe. It would not have had the same sort of impact, the same sort of incredible memory as it did having the right people with me, the people that had started the nonprofit with me. And so throughout this entire trip, we would be looking at each other and high-fiving and just incredible, companionship, incredible unity in this pursuit, especially on the heels of the humanitarian work that we had done the week before. And I started reflecting on this more and more, both in terms of safari experiences as well as the rest of my life. And on the safari, I realized this is so true. I've been on 4 trips to Rwanda to do humanitarian work from 2009 to 2015. And each one of those, we ended with a safari trip. And each one of those trips, we had experiences where sometimes it was with people that I was so glad I was with, and sometimes it was people who were kind of a drag. And I hate to admit that. But frankly, the experiences, how much I enjoyed that experience was tied to how much I had the right companions with me on those safaris, whether that was being on the Serengeti, on the Maasai Mara, up at Volcanoes National Park, looking at mountain gorillas, all these experiences that we've had. And so I started realizing and using this phrase, having the right peeps in my Jeep, and how critical it is to have the right people with me in the Jeep as I'm going around on safari so that I can maximize my joy, maximize my fulfillment. And I started extending that to not only the trips doing humanitarian work, where we would see, children in dire need, AIDS victims, lack of clean water, lack of education, all kinds of really serious issues, but also to my life at home. And I started realizing at the age of, in my mid-40s at the time, realizing how much joy and fulfillment I have is predicated on having the right people with me along life's journey. And I started really having insight that this is a critical part of my life journey, is making sure I'm surrounded with the right people. And I moved from living my life by default, basically just sort of taking who's ever there. Like who's ever there, they're just in my life. They're in my Jeep, so to speak. And started moving away from just accepting what was handed to me, instead saying, I'm going to start living my life by intentionality. I'm going to choose who's in my Jeep and who's not in my Jeep. I'm going to choose who's going to be sitting closest to me and who's going to be sitting further away. And the people sitting closest to me, those are the voices that I'm going to listen to more. I'm going to give them greater weight in my life by having them sit close to me and be more important in my Jeep. And it's this analogy of life. And I've realized that this is a message that so many of us need to hear. And for many of you, you're younger, you're in college, you're just sort of starting out. And what I want to do with this time that I have here is really encourage you to make sure you have the right peeps in your Jeep along your journey. Now, that could be your classmate, that could be your friends, it could even be your family. You decide how much weight you have to give them. Like sometimes there's people in your Jeep and you can't control if they're in your Jeep or not. They're in your Jeep, but you can control how close they're sitting to you. You can control how much weight to give them in your life. But as you're continuing to start out in your career path, this is where it becomes more and more important. This is where you have more and more choice. It is so important as I look back at the good experiences and the bad experiences to have the right people in my Jeep. And I just sort of stumbled upon good or bad. I wasn't intentional about that. And as I've looked at the joy and fulfillment in my life, I realized how tied that is to the people that were in my Jeep with me. And so let me give you an example of this. So I spent, 25 plus years in the corporate world. I'm an analytical guy. I'm a finance guy. I'm an actuary by trade. I'm a fellow of the Society of Actuaries. I have an MBA, Master's in Business Administration. And so I did a lot of work in actuarial analytical roles, capital markets hedging, which is investments, and workforce analytics, all kinds of really analytical roles in my corporate career. And what I found is when I had a boss and or a mentor that were a good fit for me, my fulfillment and my productivity and my learning all skyrocketed. When I had a boss or a mentor that just was not a good fit for me, I struggled. I wasn't as productive. I was even getting angry at times. I'd come home and I'd be frustrated. My whole life just lost joy, even though on paper I had this great job. And so now as I think about who do I want to work with, I'm thinking about I need to make sure I have an important boss or mentor figure in my life so that everything else is more productive and is more enjoyable. I've also, as I mentioned, I've been a volunteer executive director of a nonprofit. We've raised almost $3 million for the work in northern Rwanda, an area called Kivuruga, Rwanda. And I'm very proud of that. I've never taken a dime from it, just volunteer as the executive director, as one of the founders of that. And even as I look at those experiences, I'm proud of the impact we've had. It's tangible. We've seen them move from no clean water to all the way to now having pipelines. We've seen them move from having a 10 by 10 foot room as a maternity center to now a full-blown maternity hospital. We've seen them move from an understanding of AIDS, which was very, very a poor understanding, where they actually believed that you got rid of AIDS by having sex with a virgin, to now understanding viruses, understanding diseases, understanding disease prevention and control. We've seen them move from 20% enrollment in education to more than 90%. We've seen all of these unbelievable impacts, and so I'm proud of that. But when I look back and I think about the most enjoyable parts of that and the pieces that are the most memorable, it was when I had the right peeps in my Jeep as we were going through that process. So all of these experiences, I've also worked at a church. I've been an executive pastor at a church for a few years. Same situation, proud of the impact, but my joy, my personal fulfillment was tied to who was along with me along the journey. And so what I want to do is I really want to encourage you as you are sort of looking at retail sales, as you're looking at retail management, as you're looking at whatever it is your major is, whatever it is your dream is for your occupation. Don't underestimate the value of having the right peeps in your Jeep with you along that journey. It's going to make the journey so much more enjoyable. So I know at your age, oftentimes you're just sort of focusing on, I need to get my degree and I need to get a job. And of course, those are that's part of that deal. But what can be underestimated is the value of having the right people with you, and even taking a job that might not be your dream job, but taking a job that's working with people that you're going to love to have in your Jeep with you, that you're going to learn from, that you're going to be inspired by, that you're going to be motivated by, and that you're really going to enjoy. And so my message is people say, hey, now that you're getting older, and I'm almost 50, people say, okay, as you look back, what's the advice that you would give to younger people? I would say, don't underestimate, don't undervalue the importance of having the right people with you in your Jeep along life's journey. So as you think about your friends, as you think about your family, as you think about potential bosses or mentors, as you think about coworkers, colleagues, all of these things are so critical. And the reality is, it's not about the right people for everybody. This is not about who are the right people for my friend Jill or my buddy Brian or my brother Larry or my sister Mary or whoever it might be. This is about you. Who are the right peeps in your Jeep? Because one of the things that we struggle with, I think, as humans is this idea of living our life by default. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. We're sort of just handed a life. We have expectations put on us by our parents, by our siblings, by our teachers, by our communities, by our neighborhood, by our society, by our country. All of these things are sort of heaped on us by our faith, by our science, by whatever it is. There's expectations of us, and some of us are very prone to just sort of taking that on and realizing and believing that this is the kind of life I should lead. And so we allow people to should on us all the time. And so we become a reflection of what we think people expect of us, rather than being true to who our core is, who our core identity is, what we're really like. And I think that's very hard to break free from, because we've just absorbed it and we've sort of lost our identity to this driving force of expectation, to the driving force of what we should do and what we should be and how we should live and what we should do in school and what we should do for a job and all of these shoulds. We lose sight of our identity. And I want to encourage you to try to break free from that. And so when we talk about having the right peeps in your Jeep, it's not about all of us picking the same people because they're the right people for all of us. They're people that are going to align with who you are and the vision that you have for your life, which gets to kind of the real core point of all of this is, what is your ultimate vision for your life? What is your definition of success? And I will tell you that this is going to change over time. As you get older, as you mature, you're going to be surprised to see how this changes. But right now, what do you ultimately want for your life? And again, this may sound like an easy question. It may not. I'm not sure. Everybody's kind of different. But this is actually a much harder question than most people realize. To really get to the core of what you want. Because if you can't get to the core of what you really want, then you can't really choose your optimal career, where you'll live, what if you'll have a family or not, what kind of friends you're going to have. You know, you can't optimize your life if you don't know what optimal even is. So my encouragement is to take the time to really figure out, what do you want from your life? If that sounds hard, good. I'm glad, because it should sound hard. Now, you're never going to get this perfect, but what I want to do is encourage you to ask yourself the question, what do I want from my life? You might need help with this. You might need a friend, a family member, a therapist. You might need a coach to come alongside of you and help you figure that out. Because once you've clarified that, a lot of the other decisions in your life are going to be obvious. Okay? If one way you could say, my optimal dream for my life is to become the world's best retail marketer. Okay? Well, that's going to change some of your decisions on where you should work, where you should live, what you should do. Somebody else might say I just want to have a sort of a job that's going to allow me to be free and be happy and do things that I love and be creative. Both of those are perfectly perfect, perfectly optimal, perfectly satisfactory responses to that question, but it's going to result in very different ways of living. It's probably and should result in very different types of people that you want to be around. Who are the right peeps in your Jeep to become the most successful in your industry? And who are the right peeps in your Jeep to become the most enjoyable and creative and maybe independent sort of person? Those are very different types of peeps in your Jeep. So I really want to encourage you, take some time to ask the question, what do I really want out of life? And one of the ways that you can do this is you can start by answering it, give the best answer that you can, and you could do this by yourself. You could process with somebody else, but then ask the question, why? Why do you want that for your life? And it's going to take some time. It usually does for people to go, well, yeah, I don't know. You might say, if I say, okay, what do you want from your life? You say, well, I want to be successful. And then I say, well, why do you want to be successful? I don't know. Often what people will say is, well, isn't that what I'm supposed to want? Isn't that what I should want? Isn't that the American dream? Well, maybe those are what external influences tell you that you should want, but what do you want? Do you really want to be successful? Is that really what you want at your core when you think, this is the kind of life I want to live? I have one, as far as I know, who knows, but I have one chance to live life in this body, on this earth. Is my ultimate goal to be successful? If yes, great. If no, then what is it? So you get to the core of this by asking yourself, why? Why do you want to be successful? And you might say, well, because I grew up in poverty, and success would mean financial stability for me. And because of my background, because of my experience, because of the needs of my family, I really do want financial stability for me and my family. Okay, that's a great answer. If that's an honest, authentic answer. Okay, and then I would ask another question, well, why is that so important to you? And then you dig further and you dig further. And by digging, it's tough, but it ultimately gets to the point where you can't say and you can't ask another why question. You're at the crux of what it is and how you want to live your life. It becomes your sort of your mantra. It becomes your vision. It becomes your passion. It becomes upon which all of your life is built. And so I started this by really wanting to get into the question of how do you get the right peeps in your Jeep, and helping you understand the importance of having the right people in your Jeep. But you can't answer the question of saying, who are the right people to what end? The right people for what? You have to be able to answer the question, where am I ultimately going, right? Like if I'm going to go on safari, and we've had 6 different national parks that we've gone to. If I want to go on a safari up to Volcanoes National Park in northern Rwanda, up where it borders Uganda and the Congo, and you have to walk for 45 minutes, and you go up the mountain, and you follow a guide, and he's got a machete, and they're trying to find the gorilla family that you're going to visit. If I'm going on that trip, it's a certain type of person that I want with me. It's people that can have the athletic endurance to get there. It's people that have the patience. It's people that aren't going to be afraid of flying monkeys. They're not going to be afraid of snakes or lizards. They're going to be okay moving from a hot to a cool temperature. They're going to be people that really enjoy and saturate that moment of this sacred moment of really being there for an hour with a gorilla family. It's going to be people that aren't going to get wigged out if a silverback comes up and pats you on the back, right? So it's a certain type of people. If I'm going to go on at Akagera National Park in eastern Rwanda, if you know anything about Rwanda, they had a genocide in 1994 where everything was wiped out, including all of the lions were wiped out in post-genocide because they didn't have the infrastructure to support the national parks, and so poachers went in and just killed all the lions. 1994. And so we went back, we've been there a few times, but when we were there in 2015, the prior year, they had just reintroduced lions into Akagera. They got them as a gift from South Africa. So they just reintroduced them. We were among the first people to be at Akagera National Park when the lions were just reintroduced. And I want people with me. I want peeps in my Jeep who are going to understand that historical significance. All right? I want people with me that are going to go, oh my God, there's a lion. It's not just seeing a lion. I mean, seeing a lion is really cool, but I've seen them on all of my trips. This is special. This is historic significance. This is taking our trip through the genocide memorial when we first got to Rwanda, recognizing that we were at a grave where there's like 800,000 bodies buried in this one mass grave, and understanding what they went through, and neighbors killing neighbors with machetes, and the chaos that ensued, and children hiding in trees for days, and all of this historic piece that sort of culminates now 20 years later in lions at the park as a sign of hope and a continued sign of re-emergence of the country of Rwanda. I want people with me that are going to understand that significance. And so it is with you. I want to encourage you to think about the life that you want, to think about the kind of business that you want, to think about the kind of job that you want, to think about the creativity that you want or the analytical side of it that you want, whatever it is that you want, but really honestly just take a deep look at yourself. Maybe you do this yourself, maybe you do it with others, but have an honest assessment of where do you want to go with your life? Where do you want to go with your career? Try to strip away the defaults that have been given to you. Try to strip away all the people that have should on you in the past. What do you want? And from there, let some of the decisions emerge from that. From there, decide, okay, who do I need in my Jeep to make this happen? Who do I need to kick out of my Jeep to make this happen? Who do I need to move further away from me in my Jeep? And who do I need to move closer to me in my Jeep? Start being intentional about living the life that you want. You have far more control. And I just learned this. I'm almost 50. Man, I wish I'd learned it when I was younger. That you have far more control over the kind of life that you want to live. You have far more control over the type of people that you want to be with than you could have ever imagined. This is your life. I want to encourage you to live it the way that you want to live it, and to surround yourself with the type of people that you want with you as you are living and pursuing that life. Thank you so much for listening to this. If you want to connect with me, if you want to see more of what I do, I didn't bother sharing a bio with you. Your teachers can share that if you want. But at the end of the day, I'm a coach. I'm a motivational speaker. I am an author. I'm a podcaster. I create videos. This is my new world. Outside of my post-corporate life, which I left about 1.5 years ago, and there's all kinds of stories there. But so now I'm living the kind of life that I want. I'm doing the creative things that I want. I'm connecting with the people that I want. I'm sharing the messages that I want. And I'm trying to help all of us live a more intentional life, because I believe that leads to greater joy. It leads to greater fulfillment. And I think that's ultimately what the world could use, is more people filled with joy, filled with fulfillment, doing things that make them come fully alive, and then impacting the world in that way. So I hope this is helpful to you. Feel free to connect if that's a helpful thing as well. Otherwise, best of luck with everything going on. I know you're all doing this virtually, and kind of the world has a lot of unknowns, but hopefully you can find calm in the midst of that and still keep dreaming, still keep being intentional about the kind of life that you want to lead. Take care.